I've looked at men across interrogation tables who did unspeakable things. I did not flinch. Not once. Not in 22 years. So understand what it cost me to sit still at a birthday dinner I paid for, while a man grabbed my daughter's hair across the table, and his mother leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and said, "That's how it's done. She needs to learn her place." It cost me everything, but I stayed in my seat. And that decision, that one moment of not doing what every instinct in my body was screaming at me to do, was the most effective thing I have ever done in my life. This is what happened next. My name is Frank Callow, retired Atlanta PD, homicide division, 22 years. I have stood in rooms where terrible things happened and kept my voice level and my hands steady because that is what the job required. 58 years on this earth, 22 of them carrying a badge. And the moment that changed everything didn't happen in a dark alley, or a drug house, or a courtroom. It happened at a steakhouse in Marietta, Georgia, over a birthday dinner on a Saturday night in October. My daughter Katie is 31 years old. She has her mother's eyes, dark brown, quick to laugh, quick to cry. She has my stubbornness, which is either a gift or a curse, depending on the day. She married Brad Norris 4 years ago, a ceremony at a venue in Roswell that cost more than my first car and my second car combined. I walked her down the aisle. I gave a toast. I meant every word of both. Brad Norris is 34, manages a logistics team at Hartwell Distribution out of their Marietta office. Drives a truck that's slightly too large for a man who has never once hauled anything in it. He's got a handshake designed to impress, and eyes that don't quite commit to whatever his mouth is saying. First time I met him, I thought this one practices his smile. I didn't say that to Katie. Being generous, as we've already established, is a habit I need to work on. His mother is Donna Norris, 63 years old. Runs a licensed daycare out of her home in Smyrna, a place called Sunshine Steps, serving approximately 18 children between the ages of 2 and 5. Loud in the way people mistake for warmth, opinionated in the way people mistake for wisdom. And she had been inserting herself into Katie and Brad's marriage with both elbows since approximately the second week of their honeymoon. The four of us were at Carver's Steakhouse on Johnson Ferry Road in Marietta. Saturday evening, October 4th, 7:30 p.m. Katie's birthday. She turned 31 that week. I made the reservation. I ordered the appetizers. I was 2 glasses into a perfectly decent Cabernet when the argument started. It started the way their arguments always started. Quietly. Too quietly. The kind of quiet between two people who have had this conversation before and both know exactly how it ends. Brad had said something about Katie spending the weekend at my house the previous week, helping me clean out Ruth's things. Something I've been working through slowly, in pieces, for 2 years since she passed. Katie goes when she can. Brad apparently had opinions about this. Their voices stayed low. I was watching the way I always watch the way 22 years of detective work wires you to watch. I saw Katie's posture change. Shoulders in, chin down. I saw Brad's jaw tighten. I saw Donna watching the whole thing with an expression I can only describe as interested. This is the moment. Right here. This is where everything turns. Brad reached across the table, not for her hand, not for the breadbasket. He grabbed Katie's hair a fistful at the base of her neck and yanked, hard enough that her head moved, hard enough that she made a sound, hard enough that 3 people at the table next to us turned to look. Katie's eyes filled immediately. She didn't cry out. She just went still, the way an animal goes still when it's been caught. And Donna Norris leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, looked at her son with actual approval, and said, "That's how it's done. She needs to learn her place." 45 people in that restaurant, at least 15 within clear sightline of our table. Don't react. Don't give them what they want. Think. Every instinct I have, every physical reflex honed by 2 decades of standing between people in the worst versions of themselves, wanted to put my hands on Brad Norris. I want to be honest about that. I was not calm. I was something very close to the opposite of calm. My hands were on the table, and they were very still. And that stillness was doing a lot of work. But here is what 22 years of homicide investigation teaches you. The angriest response is almost never the most effective one. Men who lose control in critical moments hand power to the other side. I had watched it happen in interview rooms 100 times. The guilty party who stays composed walks out. The innocent party who screams gets charged. Brad Norris was not going to benefit from my rage. My hand moved. Not to Brad. To my jacket pocket. I took out my phone, opened the camera, and pressed record. Brad was still looking at Katie. Donna was still smiling. Neither of them registered the phone immediately. It was sitting on the table, screen facing them, casual as a glass of water. I let it run for 40 seconds. Brad's face, Katie's tears, Donna's expression, all of it full and clear in the warm lighting of Carver's steakhouse. Then I set the phone face down, picked up my napkin, folded it, placed it on the table beside my plate. Check, please. Not loud, not angry. The voice I used when I was about to make an arrest and needed to keep everything calm until the cuffs were on. Brad blinked. We haven't even gotten our entrees. Check, please. The server, a young woman named Lauren, who had been hovering nearby and had absolutely seen what happened, was at the table in under 30 seconds. I paid the bill, every dollar of it, including Brad's ribeye that never arrived. I stood up and looked at Katie. Get your coat, baby. Katie looked at Brad, then at Donna, then at me, and something in my face, I don't know exactly what, but something she'd seen before in 22 years of being my daughter, made her pick up her coat. Brad started. Wait, you can't just... Brad. I turned and looked at him for the first time since the whole thing started. Just looked. No expression. The interview room face. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I walked my daughter out of that restaurant, into the parking lot, into my truck. She was shaking. I wasn't. We sat there for 11 minutes. I know because I watched the clock the way I used to watch clocks during long stakeouts, not impatiently, just tracking. Katie didn't speak for the first 4 minutes. Then, Dad, don't do anything. Already did something. She looked at me. What did you do? I recorded it. A long pause. Dad? Katie, my voice was level. Has he done that before? She looked out the passenger window. The parking lot was busy. Couples heading in. A family leaving. A valet attendant pretending not to notice us sitting there. Not like that. Not in public. Not in public? The specific qualifier of someone who has been parsing the difference between acceptable and unacceptable for so long they don't. Remember what normal feels like. How long? Quiet. Katie, how long? About 1.5 years. She said it to the window. It's not always physical. Mostly it's he gets loud, says things, the hair thing. That's happened maybe, asterisk, dot. She stopped, swallowed. 5 times. 5 times my daughter had someone grab her hair, and she had not told me. Because she knew me. She knew what I would have done, and she was protecting him, or protecting me, or protecting some version of the marriage she still believed she could save. I didn't say any of that out loud. I just put my hand on hers. Okay, here's what happens now. You're coming home with me tonight. Tomorrow morning I'm going to make some calls. You don't have to do anything yet. Just let me work. Dad, I don't want this to get... Katie. I turned and looked at her. He grabbed your hair in front of 40 people, and his mother told you that you needed to learn your place. It's already gotten there. One small, exhausted nod. The nod of a woman who has been very tired for about 1.5 years and hasn't let herself admit it until right now. We drove to my house in East Cobb. I made tea. She fell asleep on the couch under Ruth's throw blanket. I sat at the kitchen table and watched the video on my phone 4 times to make sure I had what I thought I had. I had it. Then I made 2 calls. The first was to Ray Tillman, my partner for 11 of my 22 years on the force. Retired 2 years before I did. Now doing security consulting out of Sandy Springs. He picked up on the second ring because Ray Tillman has never once in his life let a call go to voicemail. Frank, it's 11 o'clock. I've got video of Brad Norris assaulting Katie at a restaurant tonight, witnessed by the whole room. A pause. How bad? Hair pull. Clear asterisk. Visible. Her reaction is on camera. Another pause. Longer. You file a report yet? Tomorrow morning. Wanted to call you first. Good. Who's your attorney? The family law guy. Steve Morrow, Buckhead. Call him before 9. He needs to know before Brad gets any legal advice of his own. Already planned. Frank. A pause. You didn't touch him. Didn't need to. I could hear him nodding through the phone. Good. That's good. Keep it that way. The second call was to Steve Morrow's emergency line. Steve is a family law attorney I've known for 12 years. Thorough, careful, and not easily surprised. Steve, Frank Callow. I need an emergency consultation first thing tomorrow. I have video evidence of assault on my daughter by her husband. Multiple public witnesses. The mother-in-law is on camera encouraging it. A pause. What restaurant? Carver's on Johnson Ferry. They have cameras. They do. Another pause. 8 a.m. tomorrow. Frank. My office. I sat at my kitchen table. Listened to the sound of Katie breathing in the living room under Ruth's blanket. I didn't know yet that the video on my phone was about to do more work than I could have predicted. I didn't know yet that Donna Norris's smile on camera was going to cost her something she'd spent 30 years building. And I didn't know yet that Brad Norris, confident and untouchable in that steakhouse booth, was already 3 days from the worst week of his professional life. I made myself a cup of coffee, sat back down, and started making a list. A detective doesn't solve a case by being the loudest person in the room. A detective solves a case by building something, fact by fact, document by document, until the structure is so solid the other side has nowhere to go. Steve Morrow's office in Buckhead. 8 o'clock on the nose. He'd already pulled Carver's Steakhouse. Their website shows a full security camera system, standard for a restaurant at that price point. He'd confirmed that Georgia is a one-party consent state for recording, meaning my video was fully admissible. I put my phone on his desk and played the video. Steve watched it twice. No reaction during the first viewing. During the second, he paused it on Donna's face, the exact moment she said what she said, and looked at me over the top of his reading glasses. Frank, this is a gift. I know. The mother on camera encouraging the assault. I've been doing this 20 years. I've never had that on video. Neither have I. He leaned back. Okay, here's what we're building. Emergency protective order for Katie. I can file that today, Sunday, through the duty judge. Criminal assault referral to Cobb County PD. And he paused. What does Brad do for work? Hartwell Distribution, Marietta office, manages a team of 8. Most mid-sized logistics companies have conduct clauses. Domestic violence convictions. Being thief that brings the company into disrepute. I have an HR consulting contact who can tell us how to approach that. He was already writing. What does the mother do? Asterisk. Runs a licensed daycare in Smyrna, Sunshine Steps, 18 kids, ages 2 to 5. Steve looked up. She's a licensed childcare provider. She is. And she's on video encouraging a man to physically harm a woman and telling that woman she needs to learn her place in front of a restaurant full of people. He put his pen down. Frank, do you understand what the Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning is going to do with this video? I had a pretty good idea. I wanted to hear him say it. Tell me. A licensed home daycare operator appearing on video to encourage domestic violence is a mandatory review situation. They will open a fitness investigation. They will look at her entire license history. A pause. 18 children. Frank. Their parents are going to be notified. The room was quiet for a moment. Build it all, I told him. Everything you just described. He picked up his pen again. How's Katie? Slept. Scared, but steady. Does she want to proceed? She wants to protect the marriage. Steve nodded slowly. That's common. What I also know, I said, is that 1.5 years of documented incidents which I'm going to collect from her systematically this week, combined with this video, combined with the protective order, is going to give Katie options she doesn't think she have right now. I'm not forcing her hand. I'm building her a door. Steve looked at me for a moment. Then he nodded once. The nod of a man who has just decided he's all in. Sunday afternoon, Cobb County Police Department. The officer who took my statement, a young guy named Officer Chris Wade, maybe 26, careful manner, the kind of thoroughness that comes from good training, watched the video twice and filled out every line of the report. Mr. Callow, you were a detective. 22 years. This is strong. The public setting, the witnesses, the video, this is strong. I know. We'll reach out to Carver's for their security footage. Are you requesting an arrest warrant? I'm requesting the full process. Let it follow the law. Monday, 2 hours at my kitchen table with Katie. I didn't push. Didn't frame it as an interrogation. I made breakfast. Eggs, toast, the orange juice she's liked since she was 7. And I let her talk. About the first time. About the way it had escalated slowly enough that each incident, by itself, seemed survivable. She showed me her phone, texts going back 14 months that she'd never deleted. Brad's messages after the incidents. The apologies that were actually instructions. The affection that was actually surveillance. The "I love you, but you made me" messages that were the architecture of blame. I photographed every screen. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Not with accusation, just genuinely. She looked at her coffee cup. Because I knew what you'd do. What did you think I'd do? Go after him. Katie. I waited until she looked up. Look at what I did instead. Something moved across her face. Not quite a smile, but something adjacent to it. You took out your phone. I took out my phone. And now you're building. She thought about that. Is it going to work? I poured her more orange juice. But Katie, I need you to understand something. None of this matters if you go back to him. The protective order, the evidence, the attorney, all of it requires you to choose something different. I can build the door. I can't make you walk through it. She was quiet for a long time. Mum would have hated him, she said finally, almost to herself. Your mother had excellent instincts. October 8th, 4 days after the restaurant. 3 things happened, in this order. First, Steve Morrow called at 9 a.m. The emergency protective order had been granted by the Cobb County duty judge that morning. Brad Norris was legally prohibited from contacting or approaching Katie. He'd been served at his Marietta office at 8:45 a.m. by a process server. Steve told me Brad's expression when he received the papers was, according to the server, like someone had turned the light off in his face. Good. Second, Officer Chris Wade called at 10:30. Cobb County PD had reviewed Carver's security footage, which confirmed and corroborated my phone video from a second angle, and had issued a warrant for Brad Norris's arrest on misdemeanor battery charges. Brad turned himself in through his attorney by noon. Processed. Posted bail. Out by 2 p.m. The charge was on his record. Third, at 3:15 p.m., I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. The message was from a licensing investigator with the Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning. They had received a complaint referral regarding Donna Norris and Sunshine Steps Daycare in Smyrna. They were opening a fitness review. I sat in my kitchen and listened to that voicemail twice. Didn't call back immediately. Just sat there for a minute with my coffee. Thought about Donna Norris leaning back in her chair at Carver's Steakhouse with her arms crossed. That's how it's done. She needs to learn her place. 18 families in Smyrna, Georgia were about to get a letter. The most satisfying moment in any case, and I had a few hundred of them over 22 years, is not the arrest. It's not the conviction. It's the moment when the other side realizes the game ended 3 moves ago, and they were the last ones to know. Brad Norris had that moment on a Thursday morning in October, 4 days after he sat in a steakhouse booth and thought he was untouchable. At 10 a.m. on October 9th, he was placed on administrative leave from Hartwell Distribution, pending their internal HR review. Steve Morrow's HR consulting contact had spoken with Hartwell's legal department on Tuesday, not as a threat, not as a demand, simply as a notification that an employee had been arrested for battery. That video evidence existed, and that Hartwell might want to be aware of the situation before it appeared in local news. Hartwell's conduct policy had exactly the clause Steve had predicted. Brad was escorted from the building by 9 a.m. and told not to return until the review was complete. He called Donna from the parking lot. I know this because Katie was CDC's on an email chain that Brad accidentally sent to her personal address, the old one he'd forgotten. She still checked in, which he forwarded a message from his attorney containing a timeline of events. People under pressure make small, catastrophic errors. Brad was very much under pressure. Katie brought me the email on Thursday afternoon. She drove herself. That was new. 4 days ago, she'd been shaking in a restaurant parking lot. Now she was driving to her father's house with printed emails and a look on her face. I recognized the look of someone who has been handed evidence that confirms everything they suspected and is processing what it means to have been right all along. He's been put on leave, she said, sitting down at my kitchen table. I heard he's furious. I imagine. She looked at the email. He's blaming me. His attorney said in here that the complainant's family initiated a coordinated campaign. She looked up. That's us. Is that legal, what you did with his job and Donna's daycare? I reported a crime. I provided evidence to relevant licensing authorities. I retained a family law attorney to protect my daughter's legal rights. I looked at her. All of that is exactly what you're supposed to do. She was quiet. Donna called me. What did she say? Asterisk. She said I needed to get my father under control. A pause. And then she said, a small, disbelieving laugh. She said I was lucky. Brad loves me as much as he does. The room was quiet. Katie? I kept my voice level. What did you say back? I hung up. She looked at me with an expression I can only describe as newly arrived, like someone who has driven a long way in the wrong direction and has just figured out where they actually are. I hung up and I drove here. The following 2 weeks moved the way good investigative work moves, not dramatically, but steadily. Each piece connecting to the next with the quiet logic of a case that's been built correctly. Steve filed for divorce on Katie's behalf on Monday. October 13th. Irreconcilable differences. Documented history of domestic violence. Emergency protective order already in place. Brad's attorney filed a counter within 4 days. The language was aggressive posturing, the legal equivalent of a man puffing up his chest because he has nothing else. Steve wasn't puffed up. Steve had the video, the police report, the arrest record, the text history, and 14 months of documented incidents that Katie and I had compiled together over 3 mornings at my kitchen table, written out in chronological order, with dates, descriptions, and photographs of 2 bruises she documented on her phone and never shown anyone until now. Brad's attorney went quiet after Steve sent the full documentation package. That silence has a specific sound. I've heard it before. It's the sound of a legal strategy being completely reconsidered. Donna's situation developed on its own timeline. The Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning's fitness review was thorough. They interviewed Donna. They reviewed the video. They interviewed staff. They contacted Carver's Steakhouse and confirmed the incident had been witnessed by restaurant employees and documented by security cameras. On October 22nd, 18 days after that birthday dinner, letters went out to the parents of all 18 children enrolled at Sunshine Steps. By the following morning, 11 of the 18 families had withdrawn their children pending the review's outcome. Sunshine Steps had 7 children enrolled. Donna Norris called Katie 3 more times during that period. Katie didn't answer. On the 3rd call, Donna left a voicemail. It was long. It contained the words "your father" approximately 11 times. It did not contain the words "I'm sorry." Monday, October 27th. 23 days after the birthday dinner at Carver's, Brad Norris accepted a settlement through his attorney. Uncontested divorce. Division of marital assets per Georgia law. Permanent restraining order to replace the emergency one. No custody dispute. They had no children. Brad received his share of the joint bank accounts and the furniture he'd brought into the marriage. Katie received the rest of the condo she'd furnished, and her freedom, which was worth considerably more than the furniture. Brad did not contest. Brad's attorney, after reviewing Steve Morrow's full documentation package, had apparently advised his client in very clear terms that contesting this divorce in a Georgia courtroom with that video, that police report, that arrest record, and 14 months of documented incidents was an idea that would not end in Brad's favor. Brad signed on a Monday morning. Steve called me as soon as the countersignatures were confirmed. Done. Filed. It's over. Frank. I was sitting in my kitchen in East Cobb, coffee going, October light coming through the window, the specific gold of a Georgia fall morning that Ruth always said was her favorite time of year. How's the Hartwell situation? HR review concluded Friday. He resigned before they could complete the termination process. Same outcome, different paperwork. And Donna. The fitness investigation has no set timeline. But losing 11 families in a week, that's going to be part of the record. Good. I drank my coffee. Thank you, Steve. Frank, you built this. That afternoon, Katie came over. She brought a bottle of wine, something she gets from Ruth's side of the family. The belief that most significant moments should be marked with something decent in a glass. She also brought a plant, small, in a terracotta pot. She set it on my kitchen windowsill next to the coffee maker. What's that for? I asked. For your kitchen. It needed something living in it. She sat down. Is it really done? The divorce is filed and signed. The restraining order is permanent. Brad is no longer your legal concern. I looked at her. How do you feel? She thought about it honestly the way she always does. Katie has never been a person who gives you the answer she thinks you want. Tired. Sad. A little scared about what's next. A pause. And relieved, like I've been carrying something for a year and a half and I put it down. She looked at the plant on the windowsill. Mum would have liked that plant. Your mother would have bought you 10 of them and made me carry them all in from the car. Katie laughed. The real kind. The kind that doesn't have anything underneath it. We sat in that kitchen for 2 hours, drinking wine and talking about nothing consequential. Her job, which she likes, Thanksgiving, which we're doing at her new place. Ruth's throw blanket, which Katie wants to keep, which is absolutely fine with me. At some point, she looked at me across the table. Dad? Yeah. The night it happened, in the parking lot. You could have gone back in there. I could have. You didn't. She looked at me steadily. Why? I thought about how to say it in a way that would actually land, because hitting Brad Norris in a steakhouse would have felt good for about 45 seconds. And then I would have been arrested, and the whole story becomes about me, not about you. And Brad walks. I picked up my glass. A retired cop's battery charge versus video evidence of assault. Which one helps my daughter? She nodded slowly. The video. The video. A pause. I picked up my phone instead of my fists, because the phone was going to do more damage than my fists ever could. That's not patience. No. That's math. She raised her glass. I raised mine. To doing the math, she said. To doing the math. Brad Norris, as of the end of October, was unemployed and living at his mother's house in Smyrna. Donna's daycare had 7 enrolled children and an open fitness review from the state. Steve Morrow's paralegal sent me the finalized divorce decree on October 31st with a note that said simply, clean. I put the decree in a manila folder. Put the folder in my filing cabinet between 2 other documents I've kept for years. Katie's birth certificate and her college diploma. Everything that matters goes in the same place. Then I went to the kitchen and watered the plant. It's doing well, for the record. Ruth always said I had no business keeping anything alive. Turns out, I just needed something worth keeping.